folks, if you look around the country, we're winning the early voting, and we're going to... So go move.
We have a great influence on overall on who's going to be elected, so this is a critical state.
I voted already. Yes, I did.
We already voted.
I'm voting as soon as I can get my ballot.
Look, I voted early last week by mail. I did it. And if you were curious, I voted for Barack Obama. So I did. And if you vote early, you can help someone else get to the polls. Talk to everyone you know. Your neighbors, your friends, that cousin you haven't seen in a while, that student sitting next to you in class. You know he's not voting. Take him by the arm, shake him a little bit.
We can go back, or we can choose to move forward, to work together as one nation, as one people, to make it another American century. That's the kind of president I've been for. That's the kind of president I intend to be.
Ladies and gentlemen, we need you. We need you. We need your help to win the state of Florida. And we win the state of Florida, this election is over. This election is done.
Thanks for taking these ones. Hey everybody, second day of 48-hour campaign extravaganza. We're here in Tampa. We're about to hit it. We're going to be heading out to Virginia after this. Middle-class security. And unlike Mitt Romney, I'm proud to talk about that plan. Yeah. Because the math actually adds up.
Because as you can see, I've almost lost my voice in the service of my president. I want to begin by thanking all the campaign volunteers and staff, and I want to say to all of you, you can still vote early. Just a few blocks away at 2480 Thompson Street. That's probably the most important thing I must say. But let me say to all of you, first, thank you for coming so close to the election.
Thank you for coming.
The reason I was so close is that I have one in Wisconsin and 3 in Ohio yesterday. The day before that, I did 1 in Wisconsin and 3 in Iowa. The day before that, I did 2 in Colorado and 2 in Minnesota. And I want you to know why. First, in 2008, after the primary, Hillary did 70 events for President Obama in the campaign, and I did 40. I want to explain something to all of you. I know I keep doing it. It's a great thing to give a good speech. Every now and then I give a good one myself. Doing is more important than talking, and he has been doing. tell you why I feel more enthusiastic. And I want you to go out after this rally and talk to your friends and neighbors. I know this is a heavily Republican area, but this is a... Let me tell you, it hadn't always been this way. You know, our country, we have gotten rid of so much of our bigotry. We're not as racist as we used to be. We're not as sexist as we used to be. We're not as we're not as homophobic as we used to be. But it appears we just don't like to be around anybody that disagrees with us. And there used to be, when I was a governor, I did a lot of work with Republicans. And just think how, I think America was really lifted up to see the president's performance after Sandy and see him with the Republican government. That's why we didn't have electricity yet. My daughter's apartment building had to be vacated, and there'll be literally millions of people up there on election day who still don't have electricity. We're going to have a hard time organizing our election. But when a disaster occurs, we like it when everybody pulls together. Because when you're flat on your back, you know we're all in this together, and works a lot better than you're on your own. You know that it works better when business and government and private groups like foundations cooperate than when you just practice trickle-down economics and walk away. We know that. What I want you to know is it works better when there is no disaster, when you get up and go to work every day. That's what we need in America. And only Barack Obama will bring you that kind of leadership. I say that as somebody who has spent a lot of years in this. And there aren't many moderate Republicans left in Washington. They're an endangered species. You got a congressman here in Florida, Mr. West, that said there were 81 communists in the House Democratic Caucus. Nobody since Joe McCarthy's made a charge like that. And so I thought to myself, well, Congressman, I appreciate you saying that, and I want to know who they are. I'll get rid of every one of them myself. But in my native state, Arkansas, Karl Rove and all these super PACs that are also backing Governor Romney, they're trying to make Arkansas no longer the last state in the South that still has a Democratic state legislature. Our governor has a 70% approval rating. Our attorney general has a 65% approval rating. But they have most of the other offices. But we still got a 7-vote majority in the House and a 5-vote majority in the Senate. So this secret committee comes into town. And the first thing they did was to beat 2 Republicans in the primary in the state Senate because they were too moderate. They were good people. You could do business with them. You could solve problems with them. So they purged them just so all the Republicans would know who's boss. And that they had to toe the party line. And now, I swear I couldn't make this up. 3 of their candidates for the House. One wrote a book saying slavery was a blessing in disguise. It was well disguised. The other wrote an article saying, if slavery was so bad, why isn't it condemned in the Bible? If slavery was so bad, why did it take all the way to 1861 to have a civil war? The third, I'm not making this up. The third said the family unit is the most important unit in society. I agree with that. That it was under assault. I agree with that, although maybe not from the same forces he thinks. And he said, therefore, he thought in cases of extreme childhood disobedience, execution should be permitted without prosecution. I am not making this up. So, and then they pull one of these sliding scams worthy of their nominees. The state Republican Party said, we disavow that. The local Republican committee said, they're our guys. And the secret super PACs kept supporting them. Now, there is a war going on, or that should be going on within the Republican Party, but it isn't. So, I want to tell you why the picture of the president and the Republican governor in New Jersey is a lot better for America than caving in to these kind of tactics saying, we hate them more than they hate us. They'll work with us, they the Democrats. So unless you give us everything we want, we're not going to do business with you. If we raise our children that way, we would have a nation of outlaws. And you know it. Here's why I'm for President Obama. Number one, he has been a good commander-in-chief. Yeah. Terrorism with force and diplomacy with vigor. He's got a great national security team. Especially the Secretary of State. He is completely committed to taking care of these men and women when they come home bearing the Number two, he has done a way better job with a lousy hand than a lot of people don't know. The whole election may come down to this. I said this when I spoke at the Democrat convention. I hope I have some credibility on jobs, middle class incomes. Served as president, no one who ever could have served as president could have healed all the damage done by that financial crisis in 4 years. And don't forget, the economy was really, really weak before the crisis. It was in bad shape. Middle class incomes were lower than they were the day I left office before the crisis. So, what did he do? Put a floor under it so we didn't have a depression. And we began the long road back. We lost jobs for a year after he took office, but it slowed down. Now, in the last 33 months, up to the last jobs report today, this economy has produced about 5.5 million new jobs. Bush yesterday was complaining. He said the president's always blaming his brother for this. That's not true. The president, in the middle of the 2008 election, and John McCain, I give John McCain a lot of credit for this, neither one of them wanted to vote to fix the financial system, and they risked political disapproval to do it because they knew that it wasn't about Wall Street, it was about Main Street. The largest car dealer in America stopped financing cars. We were about to be in the place where you couldn't go to Sears and finance a refrigerator on credit. And they did it. But President Obama did it in a way that you got all your money back plus a profit. It changed the Wall Street rules. We've got the best capitalized banks we've had in 20 years. It is much less likely there'll be another crash like this. If there is, this time, the stockholders and management have to pay the bill, and there'll be basically a bankruptcy procedure. You won't be on the hook again. And it does a lot of other things to try to make sure that a lot of these financial shenanigans won't occur again. Now, Governor Romney wants to weaken that. If you want the best capitalized banks we've had in 20 years, because you think that will lay the foundation of a 21st century economy, you should vote for President Obama. If you want to weaken them and run the risk of another crash, you should vote for Governor Romney. So these are real choices that affect real people's lives. So where are we? 5.5 million new jobs. We're growing manufacturing jobs for the first time since the 90s when I was president. We've got a 41% increase in exports. They're the highest percent of our income they've ever been. We have 250,000 people more working in the automobile industry instead of letting General Motors and Chrysler go down. And the whole most of them have been repaid, by the way. And Governor Romney would have let them go. And I think it would have been a terrible mistake. Because it wasn't just GM and Chrysler and their dealerships. It was the whole auto supply chain. You know that every Japanese and German company making cars in the United States endorsed this deal even though they didn't get a penny out of it. Because they knew if General Motors went down, the auto parts suppliers couldn't stay in business, and then they would be toast. Once again, in an emergency, everybody knows it's better if we say we're all in this together instead of you're on your own. We need to do this day in and day out, and that's what Barack Obama will do. And he's done a better job than a lot of people think. The third and by far most important thing is his plan for the future is a better plan than the Romney plan. And let me just walk you through it. I remember one time I was running for my 5th term as governor of Arkansas. We had to run every 2 years. And this guy, I went out to the state fair. We had a state fair day. This old guy came up in his overalls and hobnail boots, and he said, "You running again?" I said, "If I do, will you vote for me?" He said, "I guess so, I always have." I said, "Well, aren't you sick of me after all these years?" He said, "No, but nearly everybody else I've done." And I said, "Well, don't they think I've done a good job?" He said, "Yeah, but that's what you got a paycheck for, wasn't it?" It was very instructive. It means that every election is about the future. So the real question is, who's got the best plans for the future? Okay, so here's Obama's plan. The government should work with the private sector to invest in the jobs of the 21st century. We can't go back to the 90s economy. We got to go forward. He wants a modern infrastructure. So I'll give you one example. Computer download speeds in South Korea are 4 times as fast as they are here. You want everybody in rural Florida to be able to make a living? Just everybody in smaller towns, so you just don't have to go to the big cities? You got to have an infrastructure that allows computer download speeds to be rapid. Give you another example. We rank 1st or 2nd in the world because the costs went up faster than inflation. Families got in trouble, weren't getting the pay raise, the economy's troubled, and people were scared to take out more debt. They were afraid they'd never be able to repay it. Here's how the new system works. Old system, pay the banks a fee to make the loans, guarantee 90% of the loans. The new system, government loans the money directly to all the students at the University of Florida or Florida State or anybody else. The community colleges, any of them, University of Central Florida, University of South Florida, FIU, they certify the kids that are eligible, okay? And the not kids that are eligible. Because it's important to remember we need to make these training opportunities available to non-college educated, middle-aged people who deserve a chance to go back and be part of this life. People don't talk about this in the campaign. They don't talk about real things that affect real people's lives. So these loans will come at lower interest rates. I know this because we did this on an experimental basis when I was president. When I did it, the average student saved $1,300 in repayment costs for every $10,000 they borrowed. That's a lot of money. So they'll be cheaper. But far more important than that, starting next year, every person who borrows money under the student loan program will have the absolute right to pay that money back as a low fixed percent of their income. It means that nobody will ever have to drop out of college again because of the cost. It means if you graduate from college and you want to go be a teacher in a small town in Florida with a low tax base and fairly low salaries, but you want to do that for 4 or 5 years, you can do it because your loan repayment will be determined by your income, not the other way around. Yeah. So that's Obama's program. And healthcare is a big part of that economically. Just last week, there was this huge headline on the front page of the USA Today saying that exploding healthcare premiums are a big reason that middle-class Americans did not get a pay raise in the entire last decade. A lot of their employers wanted to raise their pay and had to spend the profits paying for health insurance premiums. So let's look what's happened since this terrible Obamacare. First, the worst thing we can do is go back to the status quo. In the status quo, we were spending 17.8% of our income on health care. Nobody else in any big rich country was spending more than 11.8%. The difference is $1 trillion a year, not billion, trillion dollars. Okay? And they were insuring everybody, and we were leaving 40 million out. Okay, under the new system, already 3 million Americans between 19 and 25 are insured on their parents' health. There are these efforts going on all over America to get creative and figure out how to pay for health insurance performance rather than pay by procedure, and do other things that will hold the costs down and improve the quality. For the last 2 years, for the first time, listen to this, in 51 years, health inflation has been 4%, less than half what it was in the previous year. Because of the requirement that 80 to 85% of your insurance premium now has to go to your health care, not profits or promotion, over $1 billion in refunds have been paid to American citizens, including a couple hundred thousand in insurance. So, doesn't sound too bad. And next year, more than 30 million Americans will be able to buy private insurance for the first time, even if they have pre-existing conditions. Charged to women and men. Is Obama's program. So what's Romney's program? First he says that people will be so ecstatic when he's elected that the American economy will produce 12 million new jobs. And I'm sure it's just a coincidence. But just a few days before he came up with that 12 million job number, a very respected independent business forecasting firm, Moody's Analytics, said that's exactly how many jobs the economy is going to produce in the next 4 years anyway, because of what President Obama has already done. Maybe you just forgot, you know, there's this great public health epidemic in America called Romnesia. So basically his argument is, he didn't fix this thing in 4 years. We left him a terrible mess. He didn't fix it. So put me in so I can get credit for the jobs that are going to be created. And he does have a plan. He says it's a new idea. It's the same thing they've been doing for 3 decades. He wants another big tax cut with 60% of the benefits going to the highest income Americans. He swears he won't raise anybody's taxes. And he swears, and he wants to spend $2 trillion over a decade. The tax cut costs $5. $2 trillion on defense contracting that the Pentagon says they don't need. The military budget's the way we all should. Every 4 years they say, what are the security challenges facing the country? And let's build a defense from the ground up all over again, figure out how to pay for it. And they say, I'm sorry, we don't need this money. This is not where our challenges are. Our challenge is we need more special forces. We need more protection against these roadside bombs. We need more technology that will enable us to compete and deal with threats all over the world. He said, I don't care, I know better than the Pentagon. Here's your $2 trillion. And he has to say now that he's made such a big deal out of Medicare, I'll talk about that in a minute, that he's not going to cut Medicare. He's going to spend $716 billion on insurers that the AARP says he shouldn't spend. And he's going to just gut everything up, including all the stuff for clean energy, all the stuff for education and training, all the stuff for infrastructure. Everything else is going to be cut. So if you really think it's a good idea to cut back on education and clean energy, Florida is the second largest provider of industrial solar energy in the country. You're building the first hybrid solar plant in the world. You were providing 14 times more electricity from the sun than you were just 2 years earlier. And we just scratched the surface. Governor Romney likes to brag about Germany, but he doesn't want you to look at the details. Here are the details. On a sunny day last spring, in Germany, a country where the sun shines on average as much as it does in London. This ain't Florida we're talking about. Nonetheless, on that day, they generated 66 gigawatts of electricity from the sun. That is equivalent to 20 nuclear power plants. In a country 1/4 the population of ours, less than 1/4 the size of ours. The price of this stuff is dropping like a rock. Iowa farmers now have so many windmills up on Republican and Democratic farms alike that on a good day, when the politicians are talking, they get 20% of their electricity. In Texas, when they really like to talk, on a good day, they get 25% of their electricity. Now we're laughing, but why would we walk away from this? It's ours, it's free, it's good for the environment, it reduces the dangers of climate change. And we make money out of it. Get rid of the income contingent repayments so they're much harder to repay. And let America continue to drop in the global rankings of college graduates. All to give me another tax cut?
Borrow the money from your parents.
But it doesn't make any sense, folks. It won't work. It hadn't worked before. It's not going to work again. The way we did it when I was president works better. We're going to do it. So that brings me to the budget. I'm for President Obama because he's got a better budget. In fact, I'm for him because he's the only candidate who has a budget. It's amazing to me. The Republicans had their convention, bless their heart, and they had that debt clock there. They said, oh, this debt clock, it's the worst problem in the world. Remember that? Yeah. Of course, they forgot to tell you that we never, as a country, ever had large, permanent deficits in peacetime and economic growth. Till they went on this rant a little over 30 years ago telling you the government would mess up a two-car parade and there is no such thing as a good government program or a bad tax cut.
Reaganomics.
Except when they get in, they always want to find something they want to spend money on, so they cut the taxes and borrowed the money. So in the 12 years before I became president, the debt was really nearly nothing in today's terms. It was $1 trillion. It went to $5.5 trillion. It went up 4.5 times, to $4.5 trillion. So then it took me 4 years to balance the budget, and I gave you 4 surpluses. I left office, and they did it all over again. They got rid of the rule that you have to pay for stuff as you go along, not make up the numbers. They just threw that out the window. Cut taxes, mostly for upper income people again. And then fought 2 wars and did the Medicare drug program on credit card, and they doubled the debt again.
Raised our taxes.
And then they blame President Obama for the debt. And all this thing, the only thing he contributed was the $800 billion in the so-called stimulus bill. And I believe we're going to net out a plus for that for this reason. 36% of it went to give an average tax cut of $3,600 a year to 98% of the American people so they can pay their bills. 40% of it went to state and local governments so they didn't have to lay off their teachers and firefighters and police officers. And when the Republicans refused to extend it for another year, 700,000 of those people lost their jobs. There are states in this country where more than half of the school districts have laid off teachers. And the rest of it went for manufacturing, small business, and clean energy. And it got us going down this road I was talking about. We literally got 100,000 people working in solar, 75,000 in wind. That's more people than we've got mining coal, making steel, doing other stuff. It's the future.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is unbelievable. In other words, Romney wants to do it all over again. Except this time he says he'll really, really cut, which means none of those investments.
Right.
So Obama's got a budget. Looks kind of like the first 10 years of the 20-year Simpson-Bowles plan. It says we're going to cut $2.50 of spending for every dollar we raise in taxes, and we're going to ask the wealthiest Americans who got the benefit of the growth of the last decade and the tax cuts to kick in a little and go back to paying what they did before. It's only fair, that's where the money is. I personally would rather pay a little more in taxes and see all of you be able to go to college. I'd rather pay a little more in taxes and see working families be able to go put their kids in the preschool program. Plan for 100,000 well-trained science and math teachers put in our schools to lift the and see us overtake China and Germany and become the leading country in the race for clean energy and maintain our lead. Keep Orlando the center of computer simulation in the whole world. Call me crazy, but I think if we're all in this together, it works better than you're on your own. Every time a child drops out of high school, it's a constraint on the future growth of all of us. I believe every time a young person gets scared of the debt and doesn't finish college, it's a constraint on the future growth of all of us. And that's what Barack Obama believes, and that's why I'm for him. Most importantly, Obama's got a better economic plan, and he's the only person with a budget. Great. Can you believe this? They say the debt's the biggest problem in the world. Show me your budget. See me about that after the election. First, you need to know I'm going to just cut taxes like crazy. And $5 trillion. And I'm going to spend over $2.5 trillion that Obama's not going to spend. And I'm going to balance the budget in 10 years.
On the first day. Bullshit.
Well, how you going to do that? See me about that after the election. Now, in fairness, there's only $1 trillion he's identified in it. The problem for Governor Romney is that the $1 trillion he's identified is in the president's budget plan. And Romney and Obama agree, and I agree, we should lower the corporate income tax to the international average, and we should repeal the exemptions that many corporations have. Because right now, let me just give you an example. Dow Chemical, a good American company, and they do a lot of things. They're now producing shingles with solar panels in them, for example. Wow. They're bringing jobs back to America, but they're paying almost the maximum 35% tax rate. Exxon pays 17%. Dow Chemicals create more jobs in America than they are. And there are a lot of other companies in the middle. It's crazy to have that kind of variation on the same kind of income. So they agree on that. Let's give Governor Romney credit for that. He agrees with that. He's right about that. It's in the president's plan. We need to do it. Except that's just $1 trillion. And they're spending $7.5 trillion with tax cuts and spending, not in the Obama budget. So how are you going to make up the other $6.5 trillion? And once you make it up, you still haven't done anything to reduce the deficit or the debt. See me about that after the election. You know, if you hired me to come into your backyard and fill in a deep hole, and I brought my shovel to do the job, and I said, just a minute, before we start, I want to jump down in this hole and dig it a lot deeper. You would unhire me. This is real people's lives we're filming. I've tried to talk to you about real stuff. Let me just give you, so he's been a good commander-in-chief. He's done a good job in the lousy situation. He's got a way better plan for the future. And the final thing is, he's fired up! He is more likely to keep us moving toward a more perfect union. Look at this graph. Look at the diversity in this graph. President George Bush said that I totally agree with, even though people made fun of him when he said it, because he had a funny way of saying things. He said the president is the decider-in-chief. That's true. Barack Obama decided that young people who came to this country without documentation when they were kids should be able to say if they serve in the military and go to college. In a desperate attempt, after tying himself in pretzels in Ohio, where 1 in 8 jobs is tied to the automobile industry, see what he said about Jeep the other day? He's running an ad in Ohio saying that basically Obama's allowed Jeep to move jobs to China. Then he said Obama allowed Chrysler because Chrysler owns Jeep. And then he said Obama allowed the Italians to move jobs to China. Sounds like an international conspiracy. Because Fiat owns the controlling interest in Chrysler. And I took it personally because I helped locate a Jeep plant in Toledo, Ohio when I was president. We had to do all that. Jeep district announced a big old expansion. And they're expanding in Michigan. So first, Jeep says it's not so. Romney keeps on the edge. Then the president of Chrysler said it's not so. Then the president of General Motors said it's not so. Who is the pro-business candidate here? You got two of the biggest companies in the country telling the Republican nominee to stop saying things that aren't so. So what did they do? They increased the ad buy for their false ad. You know, normal people, like when I was a kid, if I got caught with my hand in a cookie jar, I sort of took it out. Not them, they just grab more. They just think you're dumb. They think you're not going to pay any attention at all. You don't give a rip about what it's true. Barack Obama made the right decision, and that's why he should be re-elected. And a really read better Fair Pay Act. Those W-2 workers like I did know this is not just a woman's issue. Anybody trying to raise kids in a family where both parents have to work know that this is not just a woman's issue. Every man with a wife who goes to work every day wants her to be paid an equal amount of money for the same kind of work. So when Governor Romney was asked, well, would you have signed it? The man who wants to be our decider-in-chief, he sort of shuffled. He wouldn't even say whether he would have signed already on the books, because he was afraid he might make one of these extremist congressmen his man.
He knows how to do it.
Barack Obama signed the health care law, and it will allow a lot of lower-income working people to insure themselves and their children to the Medicaid program. And so, but he did agree, after a panel of doctors and other medical experts said, you are estimating way too much inflation in Medicare. And they run on this in Florida now in 2010 and 2012. So did the AARP. And therefore, they didn't cut anybody's benefits for anything. They just budgeted $716 billion less over the next 10 years for Medicare. And it added 8 years to the life of the Medicare Trust Fund. Ironically, before he got on the ticket, the vice presidential ticket, Paul Ryan did it twice and got the Republicans in Congress to vote for it twice. Now they're all attacking you. They're attacking you, not Barack Obama, you, with this bogus claim that Obama robbed Medicare. So there was an article yesterday about this right-wing group sending out text messages to mass numbers of people in Northern Virginia illegally, telling them that under Obama, Medicare only had 4,000 days to live. Actually, they're about 300 short. It's got 12 years to live. That is, the Medicare Trust Fund will be funded under current projections for 12 years. But this little firm, they got a case of Romnesia too. Because what they didn't tell you is, under Mitt Romney, Medicare only has 1,300 days to live. Why? Because if you give this money back to the insurers and other providers, Medicare will go broke in just 4 years, not in 12 years. Now that's the truth. Now you know a lot of people in Florida on Medicare Advantage, right?
Yeah.
This is what this is really about. Sometimes you just gotta follow the money. And Medicare Advantage, I admit I was very skeptical about it when it came in. But the idea was you'd give seniors more preventive services and you'd pay insurance companies more to provide those services plus the basic Medicare package. And then President Bush said we got to give them a big financial incentive to do that in the beginning because nobody knows if it will work. And then we'll take it down. And I'll give it to him. He was as good as his word. That is, when they started out, they were paying the companies $1,100 a person for $600 worth of benefits. Nearly any of us do anything for that kind of profit. But they did. Under the Republicans, they took it down. So the last recommendation said, look, let's start at 114% of Medicare and take it down to 112. There's lots of small businesses in Florida that would give anything to have a guaranteed 12% profit margin every year from now to the end of time. Right?
Right.
Okay, so this is what Romney says. He says, those insurance companies, they will not put up with this. They will stop giving people Medicare Advantage. Now this has already been done, so the disaster would be occurring if it were true. So what happened? More companies than ever before providing Medicare Advantage, 17% more seniors in it, paying 16% lower out-of-pocket cost to participate. Barack Obama strengthened Medicare. President Obama has fought to protect women's rights and to fund Planned Parenthood. basic health services. The federal government has nothing to do with funding abortion. They don't do that. They fund the preventive health services, contraception, and other health care needs of people who really do want to plan to have children and plan in an orderly way. It's a decision difference. And now, the last thing I want to say is this, because it involves this tax cut versus spending money deal. President Obama chose to give people an opportunity to enroll in Medicare because it's the least expensive of all the health programs. The drugs are even cheaper than they are in the Medicaid program, Medicare program, Medicaid. And the administrative overhead is about 2%, way less than under any private insurance plan. Governor Romney has, on repeated occasions, endorsed his running mate's budget on Medicare, which would cut Medicare costs by 1/3 in the coming decade over its already low cost. And just send it back to the states and said, you guys figure it out. Now let me tell you what that does. First of all, we all know that Medicare insures a lot of poor kids. But what many people don't know is that most of those poor kids are in working families. Working families. What are those people supposed to do? You think they're going to be as productive when they go to work every day, worried sick about their kids? And what most people don't know is that 61% of Medicaid goes to two other things. One, to Medicare seniors who have spent all their life savings and don't have any money left and have to be in nursing homes and can't stay there except if Medicaid pays for it. If we cut it by 1/3 now, what are we going to do? Which one of you wants to be the Florida decider-in-chief to decide whether Aunt Maud or Aunt Mary gets kicked out of the nursing home? What are we going to do?
Vote for Obama.
Take care of each other. To pay for this and by then. And maybe worst of all, the thing that bothers me most, maybe because I know more people in this category, this will cut Medicaid to huge numbers of families, many of them with good, solid, middle-class incomes, who have children with disabilities, autistic conditions, with cerebral palsy, multiple disorders. They are our kids too, and they are a blessing, and their parents love them, but they do cost more.
Yes, they do.
My college roommate was an Irish Catholic from Long Island who never voted for a Democrat in his life, Marine veteran, Vietnam era, until I ran for president, because we were like brothers. And then, when they tried to do something like this, when I had that big budget fight with Newt Gingrich, he never voted for another Republican for this reason. His sister had a child with cerebral palsy. For personal family reasons, she could not raise him. My roommate, who had two sons, both of whom went in the Marine Corps and served in Iraq and Afghanistan, and one of whom continues to serve in our national security operation, they took the girl and they raised her as their own. She is a beautiful, wonderful child. Today, she lives in a self-sustaining way in an apartment in Virginia. She got an education. She's had a life. But he called me one night. I'll never forget this as long as I live. He said, let me get this straight. I'm an airline pilot. I make $110,000 a year. It's a good salary in 1995. He said, so I can handle our daughter's needs. These wheelchairs are expensive. They have to have 6 new sets of shoes a year. Her best friend at school is motoring. Rides an hour a day on the bus to a minimum wage job to support her child with cerebral palsy. And they're going to take all these supports away from her to give you and me another tax cut? I said, yep. And he said, Bill, that's immoral. You can't let it happen. It's still immoral, and you can't let it happen. Good economics. We're going to make more money, folks, if we're all in this together. Yeah! that the government invests where it's needed and works with the private business community. And we're going to make more money if we keep empowering people and pulling America together across all of our diversity. We don't have a person to waste. If you hadn't noticed, everybody else in the world is trying for the same future that we used to take for granted. We cannot take it for granted anymore. So, a lot of times when I hear these people saying all this stuff, I say, what are they thinking? I've stopped that. For the next 4 days, I just know what I'm thinking. I'm thinking Barack Obama has to be the next president.